It's a common topic. How much should a landlord expect to spend keeping their home maintained? That's the question of the day. Well, it's impossible to predict exactly what maintenance your home will need or how much it will cost. Hello, property management brainstormers. It's Bob Preston here, your host, and welcome to 5 Minute Friday. FMF is a mini podcast series where I offer my best tips and advice regarding questions I frequently get from property managers, real estate investors, and landlords. I do this every Friday in 5 minutes or less. So if you're new here, consider subscribing to get all my quick advice and updates, and let's get started with today's FMF. Hi, y'all, and happy Friday. Let's jump right into it here. One of the questions I get asked often is about the amount being spent by our property owners to maintain their homes. In other words, if I own a rental property, how much is it going to cost me to keep that property maintained on an annual basis? They may just want to plan for the unexpected or may believe that the tenant is being too demanding with their fix-it requests. That happens sometimes. Regardless of the reason for the question or for bringing it up, it's a common topic. How much should a landlord expect to spend keeping their home maintained? That's the question of the day. Well, it's impossible to predict exactly what maintenance your home will need or how much it will cost and when it will become necessary, right? You just don't know that. But one thing for sure, if you plan to be a real estate investor and landlord, you need to have your own reserves set aside to cover such maintenance as it occurs. Trying to be a landlord who depends on the monthly rental income to support your lifestyle with no buffer for the unexpected can really, honestly, be a recipe for failure for that landlord. So make sure you have some reserves and are setting aside a portion of the monthly rent to cover expense items if and when they pop up. There are some rules of thumb for this that I'll get into here in a minute, but these are only a starting point for your home's annual maintenance budget and don't really take into account your unique considerations, such as what's the location and age of your rental home? What weather do you have in your area? Is it harsh? And what's the home's general condition? Okay, let's talk rules of thumb. And I have 3 of them. Well, actually 4. There's a bonus one, which I'll mention at the end. And look, any kind of rule of thumb gives you some average cost, at least for a starting point, for building your home maintenance plan and savings, but they can't provide all the details. So my favorite is known as the 1% rule. This states that 1% of your purchase price of your home should probably be set aside each year for ongoing maintenance. This popular rule, though, does have its limitations, right? Because the market could fluctuate, but the 1% rule does provide a safe estimate for maintenance savings and considers the market, physical size, and overall condition of your home at the time you purchased it. Using this logic, if your home is worth $450,000, you should set aside about $375 a month for expected home maintenance and anticipate that that total would be about $4,500 in repair costs during the year. Another practical way to estimate maintenance is known as the square foot rule. This is basically to budget $1 per square foot for annual maintenance and repair costs. This rule is slightly more consistent than the 1% rule because it's directly related to the size of the home, not the market rate. The more square feet you're managing, the more you'll likely need to spend. But keep in mind that this rule doesn't take into account the specific cost of labor and materials in your area. So market prices for contractors and building materials can vary significantly from region to region. For example, the West Coast or the East Coast versus the Midwest. Using this logic, however, if you have a 3,000 square foot home, you should set aside about $250 a month or $3,000 per year in anticipation of needed maintenance. There's also what I call, I'm going to call this the rent rate reserves rule, otherwise known as Bob Preston's rule. So I typically advise property owners, just a common sense rule is to set aside between 10 to 15% of their owner distributions received for ongoing and unexpected maintenance purposes. So using this logic, if your home rents for $3,000 a month, you should probably be setting aside between $300 and $450 a month for expected repairs. Now, that's the 3. I told you there was going to be a bonus, a 4th, and I call this the blended approach. So which of the 3 previous rules is right for you? Well, maybe the way to go is to hedge a bit and blend the various methods. So using this logic, you would calculate all the previous 3 rules of thumb, the 1% rule, the square foot rule, and the Bob Preston rule, then average that out. So using this logic from the previous examples, the monthly amount to set aside would average out to about $350 a month. Some conservative landlords might then add about 10% for each factor that's unusual for their home. For example, the age of the home, the weather in their area if it's harsh, overall condition, etc. Personally, it seems very reasonable to me to expect that an older home in harsh weather will need that extra attention to maintenance. Thank you for joining this week's 5 Minute Friday TGIF. Keep the faith, and we'll catch you next week.